Ambassador Laura Bennett stood alone at the large window of the diplomatic station called Horizon's Edge. She watched the massive ships of the Galactic Empire move slowly into position around the station. There were dozens of them, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. Their hulls gleamed with strange metals and glowed with energy systems that human scientists still did not fully understand. Behind her, the conference room was filling with people. Human delegates from every major nation on Earth had come together for this moment. Scientists, military officers, politicians, and diplomats, all of them chosen carefully to represent their species at the most important meeting in human history. 3 months ago, everything had changed. A Valdari scout ship had appeared in Earth's solar system, and first contact had been made. The aliens had been polite but distant, studying humanity the way a person might study an interesting insect. Then the invitation had come: join the Galactic Empire as a protectorate species, or remain alone in a dangerous universe. Admiral Kevin Douglas had argued against accepting the invitation. He was a tall man with sharp eyes and gray hair, and he had spent his entire life preparing for threats that might come from beyond Earth. He did not trust the aliens, and he did not like the word protectorate. It sounded too much like another word he knew, subject. But the Coalition Council had overruled him. They wanted to try diplomacy first. They wanted to believe that the universe was not as hostile as Kevin feared. Laura turned away from the window as the main doors of the conference chamber opened. The Valdari delegation entered first, led by the High Speaker himself. He was tall, nearly 8 feet, with a body that resembled an earth insect, but moved with unsettling grace. His exoskeleton was covered in ceremonial silks of deep purple and gold, and his compound eyes reflected the light like dark jewels. Behind him came representatives from other species: the reptilian Keth, the four-armed Valorn, the pale and silent Thasic, and half a dozen others that Laura did not recognize. All of them were members of the Galactic Empire, and all of them watched the humans with expressions that ranged from curiosity to contempt. The High Speaker's translator unit activated as he approached the central table. His mandibles clicked and chittered, and the device transformed the sounds into smooth artificial speech. "We welcome humanity to this gathering," he said. "Your species has shown remarkable progress in recent centuries. It is fortunate that the Empire discovered you before you attracted more dangerous attention." Laura kept her expression neutral. She had dealt with difficult people before: politicians, corporate executives, hostile foreign leaders. The High Speaker was just another version of the same thing, someone who believed he held all the power. "We appreciate the Empire's interest in Earth," she replied carefully, "and we are grateful for this opportunity to discuss the terms of our potential relationship." "There is little to discuss," the High Speaker said. "The terms are standard for all developing species. You will receive protection from external threats, access to galactic trade networks, and technological assistance to accelerate your development. In exchange, you acknowledge the Empire's authority in certain matters." Commander Daniel Shaw stepped forward. He was Laura's military advisor, a stocky man with weathered features and calm eyes. He had spent the past 3 weeks reading every document the Empire had provided, and he had found many things that concerned him. "High Speaker," Daniel said, "we have reviewed the agreement in detail. The authority you mentioned covers quite a lot of territory. Military forces, research programs, expansion rights, resource allocation, the list goes on." "Reasonable precautions," the High Speaker replied. His tone suggested that he found the question tiresome. Younger species often make poor decisions in these areas. The Empire has thousands of years of experience guiding new members toward prosperity and stability. "Guiding them," Daniel repeated, "or controlling them." The chamber went silent. The other alien delegates shifted uncomfortably, and Laura saw the Keth representative exchange a quick glance with one of his companions. The High Speaker's compound eyes seemed to darken. "Commander Shaw," the High Speaker said slowly, "perhaps I have not been clear. The Empire is offering humanity a great gift. We are offering safety in a universe that cares nothing for your survival. We are offering knowledge that would take your species centuries to discover on its own. All we ask in return is trust and cooperation. Laura stepped forward before Daniel could respond. We value safety and knowledge, she said. But we also value our independence. Humanity has worked very hard to reach the stars. We are not eager to hand over control of our future to anyone, no matter how generous their offer might seem. The High Speaker studied her for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its diplomatic warmth. Ambassador Bennett, let me speak plainly. The galaxy is not a kind place. There are powers out there that would destroy your species without hesitation, not out of hatred, but simply because you occupy space they desire. The Empire offers protection from these threats. Without us, humanity stands alone against dangers it cannot imagine. Is that a warning, Laura asked, or a threat? It is reality. The Empire has existed for 12,000 years. We have seen countless species rise and fall. Those who join us prosper. Those who refuse, he paused, letting the silence speak for him. They do not prosper. Laura felt the weight of every eye in the room upon her. The other alien delegates were watching with something that might have been pity. They had seen this before, she realized. They had watched other species stand in this same place, faced with this same choice. We will need time to consider the full agreement, she said finally. There are many details that require discussion with our government on Earth. The High Speaker's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Of course, we are patient. Take the time you need within reason. But understand, Ambassador, that the Empire's patience is not infinite. There are other matters that require our attention. We cannot wait forever for humanity to recognize the obvious. He turned and walked toward the exit, his delegation falling into step behind him. At the door, he paused and looked back. I hope your leaders are wise enough to see past their pride, he said. Pride is a luxury that young species cannot afford. Then he was gone, and the humans were left alone in the vast conference chamber. Daniel let out a long breath. Well, he said quietly, that went about as well as I expected. Laura walked back to the window and stared out at the Imperial fleet. Somewhere beyond those ships, beyond the borders of the Empire, lay the unknown dangers the High Speaker had mentioned. But somewhere out there was also freedom, the chance for humanity to build its own future without bowing to alien masters. Get me a secure channel to Earth, she said. The President needs to know what we're dealing with. The stars burned cold and distant beyond the window, and Laura Bennett wondered if humanity was ready for what was coming. 3 days had passed since the opening session, and nothing had improved. Laura sat in her small quarters aboard the human transport ship Steadfast, reading through the latest version of the Protectorate Agreement. The Empire had made some changes after their initial discussions. Small changes, meaningless changes. Humanity could keep a symbolic defense force of 50 ships. Certain research programs would be allowed to continue as long as Imperial oversight. Committees approved them first. It was an insult dressed up as a compromise. She pushed the tablet away and rubbed her tired eyes. Through the small window of her quarters, she could see the diplomatic station floating in the darkness, surrounded by the massive shapes of Imperial warships. Every time she looked at those ships, she felt the same cold weight in her stomach. The Empire was not negotiating with humanity. The Empire was waiting for humanity to surrender. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Beth Morris, her young communications officer, stood in the hallway with a concerned expression on her face. Ambassador, we have a priority transmission from Earth. President Grant wants to speak with you directly. Laura followed Beth to the bridge of the Steadfast. Where the main view screen flickered to life, President Samuel Grant appeared on the screen, and Laura felt a small shock at how tired he looked. Dark circles under his eyes told a story of sleepless nights and impossible decisions. Laura, he said without any greeting. Tell me everything, she told him. She described the condescending attitude of the High Speaker, the way the other species looked at humanity like they were watching a slow tragedy unfold, the insulting terms that the Empire called generous. She told him about the Keth representative who had accidentally revealed that his species had once been a proud spacefaring civilization before joining the Empire 400 years ago. Now they served as soldiers and miners. That's our future if we sign this agreement, Laura said. We become tools for the Empire to use however they want. Our children become their workers. Our grandchildren become their soldiers. Samuel nodded slowly. He had expected as much, but hearing it confirmed was still painful. Our intelligence teams have been digging into the Empire's history, he said. Every species that joined as a protectorate followed the same path. First, they lose their military independence. Then they lose control of their economy. Then they lose their CU. Altair, within a few generations, they're completely absorbed. The Empire doesn't want partners, Laura said. They want servants. Yes, Samuel paused, and Laura could see him gathering his thoughts. When he spoke again, his voice was steady and firm. I'm authorizing you to withdraw from the negotiations. Tell the High Speaker that humanity will not accept protectorate status. We will remain independent. Laura had expected this decision, but hearing it still sent a chill through her. They won't accept that quietly, she said. The High Speaker made it very clear that refusing the Empire has consequences.
I know.
Kevin has been working on preparations since the day we received the invitation. If the Empire decides to make an example of us, we won't make it easy for them. How much has he accomplished? Samuel allowed himself a small smile. More than the Empire knows. More than anyone knows, actually. Kevin is very good at keeping secrets. I hope those secrets are enough. So do I, Laura. So do I. The transmission ended and Laura stood alone on the bridge for a long moment. Outside the window, the Imperial fleet waited like predators circling wounded prey. Tomorrow, she would walk into that conference chamber and tell them that humanity would not be their prey. She spent the night writing her statement with Daniel's help. They chose each word carefully, knowing that it would be translated into 100 alien languages and analyzed by civilizations that had existed before humanity learned to make fire. The statement had to be clear, dignified, and firm. It had to show strength without arrogance, confidence without foolishness. When morning came, Laura dressed in her formal diplomatic uniform and walked through the corridors of the Steadfast. The crew members she passed nodded respectfully, and she saw in their eyes a mixture of pride and fear. They knew what was coming. They knew that the next few hours would change everything. The conference chamber was full when she arrived. The High Speaker sat at the head of the great table, surrounded by representatives from every major species in the Empire. They watched Laura and her delegation enter with expressions that ranged from curious to contemptuous. Laura walked to her place at the table and remained standing. She looked directly at the High Speaker and spoke in a clear, steady voice. High Speaker, distinguished representatives, I come before you with a message from the United Earth Coalition and all the people of humanity. We have considered the Empire's offer carefully. We have studied the terms of the Protectorate Agreement. We have discussed this matter with our governments, our scientists, our military leaders, and our citizens. She paused, letting the silence build. Humanity respectfully declines the Empire's offer. The chamber erupted in noise. Alien voices spoke over each other in a dozen different languages, and translator units struggled to keep up with the chaos. The High Speaker raised one of his limbs, and slowly the room fell silent again. Declines. The word came out sharp and cold. Ambassador Bennett, do you understand what you are saying? I understand perfectly, Laura replied. Humanity values its independence. We value our freedom to make our own choices, to build our own future, to succeed or fail on our own terms. We are grateful for the Empire's interest in our species, but we cannot accept an agreement that would take these things away from us. You speak of freedom, the High Speaker said, but you do not understand what you are giving up. Without the Empire's protection, humanity will be alone. The galaxy is full of dangers that your species cannot comprehend. You will have no trade agreements, no technological support, no allies. You will be isolated and vulnerable. We have been alone before, Lara said. On our own world, we faced wars, diseases, natural disasters, and countless other challenges. We survived them all. We will survive this too. The High Speaker's compound eyes seemed to burn with cold anger. Survival is not the same as prosperity, Ambassador. The species that stand against the Empire do not prosper. They fade. They diminish. Eventually, they disappear entirely. Is that a threat? It is history. I'm simply telling you what has happened before and what will happen again. Laura held his gaze without flinching. Then we will work to change history. Humanity did not reach the stars by accepting that the future was already written. We reached the stars by believing that we could write our own story. She turned and walked toward the exit, her delegation following close behind. At the door, she paused and looked back at the assembled representatives. If the Empire truly wants peace with humanity, we are willing to discuss treaties of mutual respect and cooperation between equals. But we will not kneel. We will not surrender. And we will not be afraid. Then she walked out, leaving the Empire to contemplate what had just happened. Behind her, the High Speaker sat in stunned silence. In over 2,000 years, no species had rejected the Empire's offer. Humanity had just done something that the entire galaxy thought was impossible, and in doing so, they had started something that no one could stop. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass on thousands of worlds, in stations and ships and colonies scattered across 100,000 light years. Beings of every shape and form heard the same incredible story. A young species called humanity had rejected the Galactic Empire. They had looked at the most powerful civilization in known space and said, no. Most who heard the news thought the humans were insane. Some thought they were brave. A few, in the quiet corners of their minds, thought they might be heroes. On the Faldari homeworld, the Imperial Council gathered in their great chamber to discuss this unprecedented situation. The room was vast and ancient, its walls carved from stone that had been quarried when humanity's ancestors were still living in caves. Statues of past high speakers lined the walls, their compound eyes staring down at the living with cold judgment. The current high speaker stood at the center of the chamber, delivering his report to the assembled council members. His voice was calm, but those who knew him well could detect the anger beneath the surface. The human ambassador was clear in her rejection. He said, they believe they can survive without the Empire's protection. They believe they can chart their own course among the stars. Fleet Admiral Zethrix clicked his mandibles impatiently. He was old, even by Faldari standards, and his exoskeleton bore the scars of dozens of campaigns. He had crushed rebellions, conquered worlds, and broken the spirit of species far more powerful than humanity. Then we teach them the truth, he said. A show of force at their border systems will remind them of their place. We send a fleet, we destroy a few of their outposts, and we wait for them to come crawling back to the negotiating table. Several council members nodded in agreement. This was the traditional response to defiance. It had worked for thousands of years against hundreds of species. There was no reason to believe it would not work against these humans. A wise approach, agreed Councillor Veth, one of the oldest and most influential members of the council. The humans have no understanding of our true capabilities. They see our diplomatic vessels and think they know our strength. A demonstration will correct this misunderstanding. But not everyone was convinced. In the corner of the chamber, a Keth observer named Mira spoke up. She was unusual for her species. Most Keth had long ago accepted their role as servants of the Empire. But Myra had risen through the ranks of Imperial intelligence, through skill and determination. I would recommend caution, she said quietly. Zethrix turned his attention to her with obvious irritation. Explain. I have spent the past 3 cycles studying humanity. Their history, their conflicts, their technological development. They are not like other species we have encountered. All young species believe they are special, Zethrix replied dismissively. All of them learn otherwise. Perhaps, but consider their rate of advancement. They developed nuclear weapons less than 200 of their years ago. Today they have fusion drives and antimatter research programs. They went from their first powered flight to landing on their moon in less than 70 years. No other species in our records has shown such rapid progress. Speed is not the same as power, Zethrix said. They still have only a handful of ships capable of interstellar travel. We have thousands. That was true when we first made contact, Mira admitted. But our latest intelligence suggests They have been building rapidly since then. Very rapidly. Our agents report massive construction projects in their asteroid belts, hidden facilities on the moons of their outer planets, recruitment drives that have doubled the size of their military forces. The chamber fell silent. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. You believe they have been preparing for war? The High Speaker asked. I believe they anticipated this outcome from the beginning, Mira replied. Their ambassador did not seem surprised when we issued our warnings. She did not seem afraid. She seemed ready. Zethryx waved a dismissive limb. Speculation. Even if the humans have been building ships, they cannot possibly match our numbers or our technology. They are children playing at war. A swift campaign will end this foolishness before it spreads. Councillor Veth leaned forward with sudden interest. What do you mean? The High Speaker shifted uncomfortably. There have been ... murmurs. Some of our protectorate species have been asking questions since the humans rejected our offer. The Thasic Council F. formally requested clarification of their status yesterday. The Valorn trade guilds have been meeting in secret. They see hope, Myra said softly. For the first time in generations, they see a species that stood against the Empire and did not immediately fall. They are wondering if they made a mistake when they surrendered their own independence. All the more reason to crush the humans quickly, Zethryx declared. If we allow this defiance to stand, others will be encouraged to follow. We must make an example of Earth that no one will ever forget. The council debated for hours, but in the end, Zethryx's argument carried the day. A punitive fleet would be assembled 300 of the Empire's finest warships. Enough firepower to reduce every human colony to ash. They would proceed to the edge of human space and deliver a final ultimatum. Return to negotiations and accept protectorate status, or face complete destruction. It was, they believed, a simple choice. No species had ever chosen destruction. As the council members filed out of the chamber, Mira remained behind. She stood at one of the great windows, looking out at the stars that the Empire had ruled for 12,000 years. She thought about the humans and their strange confidence. She thought about her own people, the Keth, who had once ruled a small empire of their own before the Valdari came. 400 years of service had worn away almost everything that made the Keth unique. Their art, their music, their traditions, all of it had been slowly replaced by Valdari culture. She wondered what the galaxy would look like if the humans somehow won. She wondered if freedom was still possible for species like hers. Then she pushed those thoughts away. Such dreams were dangerous. The Empire always won. The Empire would always win. But as she walked away from the window, a small part of her, a part she had thought was dead, long ago whispered a different word. Maybe this time would be different. On Earth, Admiral Kevin Douglas received the intelligence reports about the approaching fleet. He read them carefully, checked the numbers twice, and then smiled. 300 ships, he said to himself. They really don't understand us at all. He picked up his communicator and began issuing orders. Across human space, in shipyards and military bases and hidden installations, men and women moved to their stations, the Empire thought. They were coming to punish a helpless child. They had no idea what was. Waiting for them, the Imperial fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system on a cold morning in late autumn, Admiral. Zethryx stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Mandate, watching the stars settle into their proper positions as the distortion of faster-than-light travel faded away. Around him, 300 warships of the Galactic Empire moved into attack formation. Each one was a masterpiece of Faldar engineering, carrying weapons that could crack open planets and shields that could withstand nuclear bombardment. Kepler was a human colony world, home to 8 million people who had built cities and farms on a planet that orbited a distant yellow star. It was not humanity's most important colony, but it was close to the border and easy to reach. It would serve as an excellent example, Report Zethryx commanded, his tactical officer. A young Valdari named Keth studied his instruments carefully before responding. We are detecting human vessels in orbit around the colony planet. 23 ships, a mix of cruisers and smaller frigates. No carriers, no capital ships, no orbital defense platforms. Zethryx allowed himself a moment of disappointment. He had hoped the humans would put up more of a fight. 23 ships against 300 was not a battle. It was a formality. Open a communication channel, he ordered. Let us give them their final chance to see reason. The view screen flickered, and a human face appeared. She was a woman with short, dark hair and steady eyes, and she wore the uniform of a human military officer. Her expression was calm, almost relaxed, as if she faced overwhelming enemy fleets every day. I am Rear Admiral Patricia Vance, she said. I command the human defensive force in this system. I assume you are here to deliver terms? Zethryx studied her with his compound eyes. He had seen many species face the Empire's judgment over the centuries, and most of them had shown fear at this moment. Trembling limbs, desperate pleas, offers of surrender. But this human showed none of that. She looked at him the way she might look at an annoying insect. I am Fleet Admiral Zethryx of the Galactic Empire, he replied. And yes, I am here to deliver terms. Final terms. Your species has made a grave error in rejecting the Empire's generous offer of protection. I am authorized to give you one last opportunity to correct this mistake. I'm listening. Surrender your fleet immediately. Order your ambassador to return to the negotiating table and accept protectorate status without further conditions. If you do this, the Empire will show mercy. Your colony will be spared. Your people will live. He paused for effect. If you refuse, this planet will serve as an example to humanity and to every other species in the galaxy. We will reduce your cities to ash. We will turn your farms to glass. 8 million humans will die today, and their deaths will be on your conscience. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. Zethryx felt something he had not experienced in a very long time. Uncertainty. That smile was wrong. It did not belong on the face of someone who was about to watch their people die. Admiral Zethryx, she said, I have a counter-proposal. Turn your fleet around. Return to Imperial space. Report to your council that humanity is not interested in their offer, not tomorrow, not ever. Do this, and no one needs to die. You have 23 ships, Zethryx said slowly. I have 300. Do you truly believe you are in a position to threaten me? I believe, Patricia replied, that your intelligence about human capabilities is significantly outdated. Out. The channel closed. For several seconds, nothing happened. Zethryx stared at the empty screen, trying to understand what had just occurred. The human had not begged. She had not bargained. She had simply threatened him. As if she knew something he did not. Then his tactical officer made a sound that Zethryx had never heard before. High-pitched chirp of alarm, mixed with confusion. Admiral, we are detecting additional vessels. They are emerging from the asteroid belt on our port side. More signatures behind the colony's moon. More from the debris field near the outer planets. Zethryx turned to the main tactical display, and his compound eyes went wide. Ships were appearing everywhere. Human ships, hundreds of them, dropping out of concealment positions that had been prepared months or years in advance. They were sleek and angular, built from designs that Imperial intelligence had never seen. And they kept coming. 400 vessels, the tactical officer reported, his voice rising with each word. No, 500. Admiral, we are being surrounded. Zethryx watched in disbelief as his carefully planned formation crumbled. The Imperial fleet had expected to intimidate a primitive species into submission. Instead, they had flown directly into a trap. He demanded. Our intelligence said they had barely 100 ships capable of combat. The intelligence was wrong, a voice said quietly. Zethryx turned to find observer Mira, standing at the back of the bridge. She had been assigned to the fleet as an advisor, and until now, she had remained silent. They built them in secret, she continued. Hidden facilities, concealed shipyards, civilian construction projects that were actually military in nature. They knew we were coming, Admiral. They have known for months, perhaps longer. Patricia's face reappeared on the view screen. Her smile was gone now, replaced by an expression of cold determination. Admiral Zethryx, I am going to ask you one more time. Will you withdraw? Before Zethryx could respond, the human fleet opened fire, but they did not fire at the Imperial ships. Instead, they fired at the space directly in front of the fleet, a concentrated barrage of plasma. Weapons and kinetic projectiles that created a wall of destruction between the two forces. The message was clear. We could destroy you, but we are choosing not to. Zethryx understood immediately. The humans were not just showing their strength. They were showing restraint. They were demonstrating that they had the power to annihilate his fleet, but preferred to let THM leave alive. It was brilliant. It was terrifying. And it changed everything. All ships retreat, Zethryx ordered. The words tasted like poison in his mouth. Fall back to hyperspace coordinates. We are withdrawing. His officers stared at him in shock. In thousands of years of Imperial history, no Faldari fleet had ever retreated from an enemy. But Zethryx was old enough to know the difference between courage and stupidity. Fighting here today would accomplish nothing except the destruction of his fleet. The Imperial ships began to turn, moving toward the edge of the system where they could safely jump to hyperspace. The human fleet did not pursue. They simply watched, holding their positions, letting the Empire flee, as the Eternal Mandate prepared to jump. Zethryx took one last look at the human vessels on his tactical display. 500 ships, built in secret. Waiting for exactly this moment, he thought about what Mira had told the Council. That the humans had been preparing for this outcome since the day of first contact. He thought about the young species that the Empire had dismissed as primitives. As children, as prey, the Empire had made a terrible mistake. And Zethryx knew, with cold certainty, that this was only the beginning. The news of Admiral Zethryx's retreat reached the Imperial Council before his fleet. Did 300 warships? Pride of the Faldari military had fled from a species that the Empire had dismissed as primitive and weak. The humans had not just defended themselves, they had surrounded the Imperial fleet, demonstrated overwhelming force, and then allowed them to leave in shame. It was the greatest humiliation in Imperial history. The council chamber erupted in chaos when the reports were confirmed. Council members shouted accusations at each other, blaming intelligence failures, diplomatic mistakes, and military overconfidence. The High Speaker sat in stunned silence, watching his colleagues tear at each other like animals fighting over scraps. But outside the council chamber, in the streets of the Valdari capital and on worlds across the Empire, a different kind of reaction was taking shape. The Protectorate species were talking. On Keth Prime, the reptilian workers who had served the Empire for 4 centuries gathered in secret meetings to discuss what they had heard. Their grandparents had told stories of the time before the Empire, when the Keth had ruled their own worlds and made their own choices. Those stories had seemed like fairy tales for so long. Now, suddenly, they seemed like possibilities. On Valorn Station, the four-armed traders who handled most of the Empire's commerce began asking dangerous questions. They had accepted their role because they believed the Empire was unbeatable. But if a young species like humanity could stand against the Valdari and win, what did that mean for everyone else? On 100 other worlds, in 1,000 other communities, beings who had lived their entire lives under Imperial rule looked up at the stars and wondered if freedom might be possible after all. On Earth, the reaction was very different. Celebrations erupted across every continent when the news arrived. In cities and villages and homes and public squares, billions of people cheered and wept and embraced each other. They had faced the greatest power in the galaxy and survived. More than survived, they had won. But President Samuel Grant knew that the celebrations were premature. He sat in a private conference room with Ambassador Laura Bennett and Admiral Kevin Douglas, studying intelligence reports from across human space. The immediate crisis was over, but the long-term challenges were just beginning. The Empire will not forget this, Samuel said. They will be back. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next year, but eventually they will come with more ships and better intelligence. Kevin nodded. I agree. We bought ourselves time today, but that time is not unlimited. We need to keep building, keep preparing. The fleet we showed them at Kepler was impressive, but it was also most of what we have. If they had called our bluff and fought ... they would have won, Laura finished. We would have made them pay a terrible price, but they would have won. So we build more ships, Samuel said. We develop better weapons. We prepare for the next confrontation. That's part of it, Laura agreed. But I think there's another opportunity here, one that might be even more important than our military strength. She pulled up a display showing communications traffic from across the galaxy. Hundreds of messages, all arriving within the past few days, all from species that were currently part of the Galactic Empire. They're reaching out to us, she explained. The Keith, the Valorn, the Thasic, and dozens of others. They want to talk. They want to know how we did it. They want to know if there's hope for them too. Samuel studied the display with growing interest. You think we can turn the Empire's protectorates against them? I think we already have, just by existing. Every species that joined the Empire did so because they believed they had no choice. They believed the Empire was unbeatable. We just proved that belief wrong. Now they're wondering what else they were wrong about. Kevin leaned forward. If even a fraction of these species decided to resist the Empire, it would change everything. The Valdari would have to divert resources to maintain control over their existing territory. They couldn't focus all their strength on us. It's risky, Samuel said slowly. If we encourage rebellion and the Empire crushes it, we'll be blamed for the deaths. And the Empire will be angrier than ever. They're already angry, Laura pointed out. And those species are going to start asking questions whether we help them or not. The only question is whether we want to guide that process or let it happen randomly. Samuel was quiet for a long moment, weighing the possibilities. Outside the window, the sun was setting over the capital city, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. It was beautiful, he thought. Earth was beautiful. And today, for the first time since first contact, it felt like Earth might actually have a future. Set up secure communication channels, he finally said. Let's hear what they have to say. We'll take it slow, feel things out, see who's serious and who's just looking for trouble. But you're right, Laura. This is an opportunity we can't ignore. Laura smiled. I'll start making arrangements. Some of these species have been waiting centuries for someone to show them that resistance is possible. They deserve to know they're not alone anymore. 3 weeks later, the first official representatives of the Keth resistance arrived at a human space station in a remote system. They were nervous, suspicious, and afraid, but they were also determined. They had spent their entire lives believing that freedom was impossible. Now they had come to learn that they were wrong. Laura met them personally, greeting each delegate with respect and warmth. She listened to their stories, their fears, their hopes. She told them about humanity's own history, the centuries of struggle and conflict that had eventually led to the stars. She told them that change was possible, but it was never easy. It required sacrifice, patience, and courage. Why are you helping us? One of the Keth asked. What do you want in return? Laura considered the question carefully before answering. We want what you want, she said. A galaxy where species are free to make their own choices. Where strength doesn't give anyone the right to rule over others. Where the future is written by everyone, not just the powerful. That sounds like a dream. It is a dream. But sometimes dreams come true, if enough people are willing to work for them. The Keth delegation returned home carrying more than information and promises. They carried hope, and they spread that hope to others who spread it further. Until the entire galaxy was whispering about the humans who had stood against the Empire and lived, the Galactic Empire had ruled for 12,000 years. They had conquered countless worlds and absorbed hundreds of species. They had believed their power was eternal and unchangeable. But in a single moment, at a forgotten colony world called Kepler, everything had changed. Humanity had come to the stars expecting to find their place among ancient civilizations. Instead, they had found an empire built on fear and control, and they had chosen to stand against it. Now, for the first time in millennia, the galaxy had something it had almost forgotten. It had hope, and that hope would change everything.